Good morning, everyone. Here we go. July 9, 2025. Here we're in a Global Women Fresh podcast. Super excited to be here. I'm excited to welcome Ruth Villalonga to our podcast today.
Hi, Julie.
Good,
Excited to be here.
good, good morning, Ruth. How are you?
Very, very well. Super happy to be here with you and Carmel.
Excited. Well, and also we have Carmell Clark, our executive Fortune 500 coach. So yeah, super excited to be here. I'm going to read a little bit about who Ruth is, and obviously we'll give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about who you are and what we're doing today. So Ruth is a national recognized award-winning communication strategist who has shaped the reputation of some of the most world iconic brands such as Ford, Bank of America, Colgate, P&G, and even FIFA. Um, Not only have you worked with Fortune 500 companies, but also with government officials such as President George Bush and a few others. And we're super delighted to have you here in our podcast today. Ruth, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Let's jump in. Let's dive in.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a brand strategist, as you say, but more than anything, I'm an advocate for amplifying voices in leadership. So I'm super excited to be here to talk about a subject I'm deeply passionate about, which is a personal brand strategy that doesn't confine a person to a title, that transcends job descriptions, and that helps positions leaders as influential voices, especially in spaces where they have been historically underrepresented, which is the case of women in the fresh produce industry. So really, really excited about this conversation.
Excellent, excellent. And Carmel, how are you? Haven't seen you. We haven't seen you in a while.
I know. Well, I had a great weekend over this last 4th of July, but so happy to be here with both of you and jumping in. And I'm really excited, Ruth, for this conversation. I think it's really important. It goes hand in glove with the work that I have been doing with women and advancing women leaders in the fresh produce industry, right? The training, the leadership, all of that. We're talking about personal branding here. And, Ruth, your story in and of itself is an example of the personal branding that we're talking about. Maybe you could just take us into some of the highlights of your story and personal branding about how you basically employed for yourself what you ended up doing for others so successfully.
Thank you. Sure. I mean, I'm an immigrant from Venezuela, so I'm a political asylum seeker 22 years later. I
Mm.
arrived to this country already being a communications professional, and I decided to continue to do what I love. So I furthered my education through a master's degree and quickly joined the workforce, right? My first opportunity was with a small agency that propelled me to a position with Mayor Bloomberg in the city of New York.
Mm.
And it was there as a press secretary and later as director of communications of the city of New York's own health plan that I realized I had a voice and a perspective that matter in a
Mm.
city of 6 million people with 5 official languages. My views of the world as an immigrant, as a woman, and as a Latina were important, more so when considering I had discovered myself as a Latina recently, right when I arrived, and I decided to make that count and be the best Latina advocate and the best voice I can be, not just for my community but for all multicultural communities. And from that point forward, as I further my career in corporate America with Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Molina Healthcare, Wells Fargo, and then in the agency world, I was very intentional and very strategic to position myself beyond the title, right? To give others an idea, not just of what I did, but what I stood from, what I stood for. It is really not about the label or the title on your business card. It's about the impact you can create, what you stand for, and what you do to elevate others. And that has been my strategy. And I have used LinkedIn as a primary platform for that. But it's not only platform, but it is a very, very accessible, user-friendly one that everybody has at their fingertips. But obviously, I have expanded that leadership and that personal brand into speaking engagements, media appearances, interviews, and every opportunity to influence not just my industry, but the public opinion around the United States about, diverse communities, about multicultural segments in the US as they drive growth and really represent the growth, fastest growth opportunity for any brand, institution, or corporation.
I just absolutely love that you took us inside business with principles and purpose, right? That's what I heard in what you were saying. And I think that too often we focus first on business and we leave off the principles and purpose. And as we're building a personal brand, we're focused on what we do, not why we do it and where we come from to do the thing that we're doing. But you're coming at it from exactly the opposite perspective. You're saying right from the get-go, like, I have to make sure people know who I am and why I am in the first place, as I also then talk about what I do and what I can do for you. Is that?
In a world where we are faced daily with that tsunami of data and information, authenticity is key. Half of the time nowadays, people are wondering, is this real? Was that AI?
Mm-hmm.
So being true to yourself, being real and authentic is a huge differentiator, and it's really what people are looking for. And the only way to be yourself is to be authentic to your values and your principles and build those into a framework that shapes your leadership strategy and your messaging, right? And your narrative and what you bring to the world. Mm-hmm. It's really about giving others a line of sight into your character. I mean, in senior leadership, there's little question about competence, right? We got where we got because we know how to do our job, right? We know what we need to know to be there. It is really about who you are as a leader, what you stand for, what marks the difference. Mm-hmm. And character is like the roots of a tree. Normally, the tree, what you see are the leaves and the flowers. Those are all your accomplishments. Those are the business results. Those are the deliverables. Mm-hmm. But character are the roots of that tree, and there is very little line of sight into that unless you open that window through an intentional and a strategic approach to your personal brand. And personal brand and executive positioning at this point, given the tsunami of information that we are getting every day, and the fact that social media brought forward the equity of influence.
Yes.
Right? It is not optional. Right. Exercising your leadership and shaping how people perceive you is not optional anymore. Really, you need to bridge the gap between who you are and how you want to be seen so that others can put a bet on you. They are trusting you. They are choosing you. They are playing favorites. And the only reason that is going to allow them to do that is if they believe in you as a person, as a leader.
Beautiful, beautiful. Julie, I love Ruth taking us inside that, because as she was talking, I'm thinking, this sounds to me exactly like Julie creating Global Women Fresh.
Yeah, we cut to the chase here. We're not losing any time for sure. No, I do love the concept, and I think that it's worth to maybe spend a couple of more minutes on this conversation of what you just brought up of the interaction or the connection between AI in building this personal brand, right? Like, I think that probably in the last 6 months, we've seen, especially as the platform that you just mentioned, LinkedIn, which is the platform that obviously we all use to connect, to look for opportunities, to create new business opportunities. And you've seen in the last 6-7 months where just it's kind of a little bit of a copy and paste from AI. So I think that it's really kind of doing a couple of things in that LinkedIn platform. One is pushing people away from it because people are kind of jumping in it and they're saying, well, who am I reading here? Am I reading just a chat GPT concept? And I think that that's kind of we're losing. It's kind of an interesting conversation because as we talk about positioning yourself and trying to create opportunities and connect with people, then how do you create that authentic voice, right? And I think that that's something that you and I, Ruth, we spoke in our preliminary conversation. Creating that authentic voice is important. And I see it often, especially in the Global Women Fresh community, right? Like, how do we give the tools to women to continue to create that voice, right? Like, and how do we give them tangible tools to think about, hey, as you're thinking to creating your personal brand and your voice in the social media platforms, these are some of the main 3 items, 4 items that you should be thinking about.
So, I mean, that is a loaded
It's a loaded
question.
question, yeah.
Yes. And there are a few things that I want to touch base on. First of all, is we're not talking about performative visibility. Posting for the sake of posting, sharing things for the sake of sharing, going to events for the sake of going, and being in every single room every single time to just have this performative visibility. That's a vanity metric. Visibility without credibility is noise. It's really, actually, it undermines what you're trying to do. Authentic influence comes from consistently sharing knowledge and a perspective that is aligned with who you say you are. If you are into mentorship, make sure that you are mentoring people inside your organization and outside, and that you speak about the importance and why you do that, how it impacted your own life, and the impact you're hoping to have in others, right? It's about showing your work and the lessons learned and building trust over time. Personal brand is compounded work because influence is compounded. So do not obsess about posting for the sake of it, or over the likes, or just try to provide value. Showcase how you can help others think differently, approach a problem in a different way, solve a problem, see themselves in your journey, right? Those are a few things that I want to highlight. And since that is the objective, make sure you do not sort of more give up your voice to ChatGPT or any LLM. We always say in communications, the first draft from LLM or AI or ChatGPT is actually a smart move. A final draft from ChatGPT is actually a lousy one, right? It is really sloppy. It is made a tool to accelerate the content creation, but you need to be involved in your tone. Speak like you do. Make sure that it sounds like you. Go back and challenge what you are being fed, right? When you're being given to post. Give it perspective. Talk about an anecdote. Interject knowledge or a reference. Make sure that at the end, it sounds like you, because, and this is very hard for women, we want to hear from you. Your personal narrative counts and brings value. So as you think about how you craft that, think about, what are you the go-to person for? What values are non-negotiable how you lead? What impact you want to be known for? Have that clarity. And I often also help leaders think about what is their only I statement. Only I can help brands connect to multicultural America to future-proof their business. So what's your only I statement? What makes you unique? What is that value proposition that you bring to the table? And do not hesitate to share your experience, because you're not ready, because it's not perfect. Actually, in the era of AI, imperfection, authenticity is an advantage. So
Yeah.
really know that your narrative, and whether you have few years in a career or many, your experience is as valuable as any other.
I think
In,
that's
in,
so. Oh, go
go ahead.
ahead,
Go ahead. No,
please.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that is one of the challenges right there, because women specifically, this is one of the top things that I encounter with my trainings, my executive coaching, working with women, is that need to make sure that it's perfect before it goes out. I need to have a perfect knowledge base, because they're going to ask me questions and I need to know the answers. And I'm not allowed to have any space where I don't know the answers. I hear that over and over again. And it's revelatory for women to suddenly realize, oh, wait, okay, I can create my responses to those moments. I can be part of a bigger conversation, even if I don't have the whole knowledge base, and not hold back. And that leading into messaging and leading into personal branding and understanding that is really an opportunity for women to step into leadership that they may have held themselves back from for a very long time. I think this is a really important point to drive home right now, that women, like, especially right now, well, not just right now, but now in this age of AI, what you're saying and what I've heard, and we agree on this all together, is that the imperfection is indicative of the authenticity that is so wanted and so looked for when AI is putting everything out in a perfect way. I think I want to also mention into that as we're walking into this use of AI, one of the things that was important to me was not. I wanted to have my voice, and I also, intellectual property, right? When you put something out into ChatGPT, you don't own it anymore. And so I had my team create a closed AI system that is populated with all of my information, and of course, prolifically writing all of these different things out there. But it ensures that even as I use that closed AI system to help me, the voice is authentically mine that's being built. And it's not to say everybody will create their own closed AI system, although it's quite easy to do. It's an important factor to think about, especially if you are a leader who's wanting to make sure that you're carefully curating what's going out there, and you want it to be as authentically you as possible. There is that possibility as well, to create your own closed AI. In that, the ability to save a lot of time, but to know that the time saved is from your own content, and you're deriving from your own content from that place. I think that's worth mentioning in this concept.
I think so. And I love that you brought it up. At Villa Communications, we actually have a tool to help leaders find their voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a voice finder that, through open questions and multiple choice and digging into your leadership style, gives you parameters that you can use in your closed AI or even in the open one to start shaping messages from the get-go in your authentic tone. You still need to go through it and sort of simmer that, and think through and challenge what you're being, the output, and interjecting yourself and making sure. I mean, it's a labor of love. It's a labor of really seeing yourself reflected in every word. And it's a commitment to doing so. Do not lend your voice to ChatGPT, or to, do not give that up. I mean, to the women listening, the future of influence is not reserved for the loudest voices or the biggest titles. It really belongs to those that are willing to show up consistently, that are committed to their voice, that share generously what they know, what they have learned, and that lead with absolute conviction because they are anchored in their values. Do not wait for permission. Do not seek perfection. Seek excellence. Build your brand by sharing your story, sharing what you know, engaging with purpose. And in the most technical way, that means post at least once a week, interact with commentary at least 3 times a day, and make sure the commentary is not like, thank you, wonderful, great job. Make sure that you're providing value at least 3 times a day. Why? Because the algorithm and the actual business model behind LinkedIn It's not the same business model that they use for other social medias. And other social media is like eyeballs on content, right? It's impressions. For LinkedIn, the business model is based on engagement. So
Mm.
the more value you provide in your post and in your commentary, and the more engagement you create going back and forth with others, the better you are going to rank based on the algorithm that the platform is built on. So make sure that when you give, you take the time to think through and to provide a comment that provides insight, value, and a line of sight into who you are and what you stand for. Again, let's move beyond the titles. It's not what you do, it's what you stand for, what is going to differentiate you from the rest.
Yeah, and I think in our industry, I think it's the title. It's a big deal, right? So I think that as you escalate to a BP role or a CEO level role, I think that you obviously have to be extremely mindful of what you're posting and your voice out there. So I think that those are definitely really great points there that you take us through, Ruth. I would love to kind of just pick your brain as obviously you come from outside of the industry and you have advise and work with different brands such as Procter P&G and FIFA and Bank of America and others. As you work with both female and male leaders, are there certain things that you that you see within the female leaders that are pretty consistent versus the male leaders? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
And I have noticed in my own self. First and foremost, we often wait for permission, right? We are like, is it okay if I think, what if? We are a little hesitant about being very direct and very firm about what we want to express, think, or how we want to interject on the value we want to provide. And that is holding us back because it undermines our brand. If I tell you I'm an expert and then I start hesitating about the counsel I'm giving you, then am I really an expert? Do I believe in myself enough for everybody to believe in me? At the end of the day, we're leading massive organizations with huge P&Ls, and balance sheets, and shareholders are watching. So our leaders going to confide in somebody who thinks we should do this way or that way. I feel that asking for permission and being timid about expressing ourselves is really undermining our leadership. Um, Also, I feel that we could do more about bringing more women in. Once we get the seat at the table, the most important thing you can do is bring another woman in. Or
Mm.
as Cynthia Marshall, the former CEO of the Dallas Mavericks, would say, hook a sister up. That
Mm.
is really what we need to do more. The more of us around the table, the more of us in the boardroom, the greater our influence, the greater our opportunity to really shift gears and make people think twice about certain decisions. So I have noticed that those are things that perhaps we're timid to do, and not necessarily we're so concerned and so grateful to be there, that we sometimes don't dare rock the boat that much by bringing others. But we need to find that courage, anchor in our values and our own story, and in the conviction that our perspective matters. I mean, women drive 80% of consumer purchases in the United States. I mean, in most families.
Hmm.
I mean, women are leading the way. If there's some consumer anybody needs to be paying attention to, those are women.
A
So
hundred
let's
percent.
bring that conviction forward as we share our thoughts and our perspective, because we know the people we're trying to reach, especially for B2C brands.
Yeah, no, I think that especially in our industry and like the economic power that women has is astronomical. And you're right, the numbers are between 80 to 90%. So It's fascinating to continue to push and help women and empower women and bring speakers of this caliber like yourself, so we can really impact the lives of women across the industry, all the way from grower, packer, shipper, retailer, et cetera, et cetera. Carmel, any other questions on that line before I jump into the next topic?
I do. Thank you for asking. One of the things that I'm interested in with women and how women present themselves is this challenge, because I find that women all too often in leadership, or as they're coming up into leadership, are trying to get the lay of the land and figure out how they need to appear as they show up. And part of that, how I need to appear, is about how do I be seen as credible? How do I be taken seriously? How do I gain the respect of my peers and those leaders that are at the levels above me in the organization, et cetera, et cetera. And all too often, what I see is that women then channel all of their immense competency into deliveries that are more recognizable from the masculine side of things, right? And how do women be exactly themselves, all the parts of themselves, including having, maybe more emotional intelligence that they bring into situations, or more vulnerability, more openness in those ways? How do they learn how to really stay in that lane and trust that lane and bring that along with all their competence?
The key to that is personal brand. Your personal brand would have built that credibility, would have opened that door before you're even there. Your personal brand, if worked consistently, intentionally, and strategically, would have done the job for you to position you as an expert. By the time you come, it's not about you raising your hand, it's about the turning over and saying, what do you think? Because they know what you bring to the table. So that is why it's so important. And women often don't like the visibility and don't like to feel that they are, you know, praising themselves or being modest. But this is not about that. This is about strategic visibility. This is about influencing an industry and being able to open doors that are going to get you to the next level. And your personal brand, if done well, will do that for you. And we have many leaders in Villa Communications that we have helped through this journey that can attest to what I'm saying. If you are true to yourself and you build your brand ahead of time, by the time you get there, they are more often than not turning around and wanting to know what you know and what you think.
Love that.
Love that. Yeah. And I think a little bit also of just kind of turning gears a little bit here of what what we talked a little bit in our pre-interview, and a little bit of what you and I represent, multicultural, the combination of two, we were born in South America, but then have spent the last 20, 25 years here. And I think also I see a lot of that, right? Obviously, Latin America, it's for our industry is a big part of the business. As you think of countries like Colombia, Chile, Peru, Mexico, we are the, in a lot of times we're the ones kind of feeding the world, right? And as I see a lot of these women executive and leaders, um, you know, go from one country to another culture to another language, I think that that's another opportunity for that personal brand and to help women feel comfortable with where they're coming from, with their language, with the accent, and with all of those things. So, what are your thoughts there, as you've done some work down in Latin America?
Yes, I mean, this is a huge topic that I'm very much passionate about. I came to this country, as I said, 22 years ago, and then one day I found out that I was a Latina. This is a social construct that only exists in the United States. So for most of my life living in Venezuela, being a Latina was not a thing. It didn't even exist. And I decided that I was going to embrace it as my part of my identity, and I was going to make it count. And from that point forward, I have made that a huge differentiator that has given me a competitive advantage. And whoever understands math should know that. It doesn't matter if you have an accent, it doesn't matter where you grew up or where you come from. Particularly for Latinos, we are driving the economy and we are driving the future of this country. 80% of the workforce growth in America is multicultural, with 70% of that through 2030 being Latino. So organizations are going to need Latino leaders, right, that know how to connect authentically with this workforce. And on the consumer side, I mean, the Latino GDP, the growth product is actually $4 trillion as of today. We are a force to be reckoned with. If you have an accent, it only means you can speak two languages, right? And that you will be able to connect with a consumer market and with a part of the workforce that need to hear from leaders that look like them. So to me, this is the best time to actually be different in America. 100% of the growth in the country in terms of consumer in particular is multicultural. We are really shifting as a nation, and there's no better time.
Did you catch that? Did you catch that? She just created the personal brand foundation for the Latina woman right there. So if anybody hasn't watched this, if you are a Latina leader, you need to watch this right now. She just walked us through that. That was brilliant. That was perfect. Love that.
Thank you. And I mean, the most important part of it is to wholeheartedly believe it.
Yeah.
Nobody can do that part for you. And I always tell my leaders, we need to make sure that the work we do is aligned with your core, because you can only pretend for so long. And that is why stepping into masculinity or stepping into other type of fixed stereotypes or roles never works. It works in the short term, but not in the long term. The people don't believe you, and you cannot withstand it. You cannot sustain that work. So to me, there's no better time. This is our time to lead.
Yeah, I love that. And I also, I mean, I think it's a big part of what we're trying to achieve here at Global Women Fresh. I think that as I mentioned before, we are really working, creating a global community in where women can come and create business opportunities, create opportunities of career coaching, executive coaching, through the work that we do with Carmell Clark and our partnership with her company. But yeah, it's really kind of giving the tools for women to succeed, and whether they're staying in the produce industry or whether they're looking for new opportunities in other industries. I think that this conversation of personal branding and finding your voice is extremely relevant. And I think that in my as I look in my own personal journey, when I started it back 20, 25 years in this career, I think to Carmel's point, I think that, yeah, we in a male dominated, sorry guys, my dog, give me 1 second.
Oh, Lola, that was Lola.
Love doggies.
Julie will be right back with us, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say. But there you
Sorry. It's always the dog, man. She's always never barks. She always
But
wants to bark at this time.
it just makes us so authentic. I mean, we're women, we are leaders, we are pet
We take
moms.
care of our families, of our
Yeah,
kids, of our dogs, for sure.
this is what
Um,
it is all about.
yeah. But no, so what I was saying is creating community is a big, big deal. And to Carmel's point of finding your voice in a very male dominated industry, I think it has its challenges, right? Like how, and I think for me, as I was developing myself in the last 20 years, at the beginning of my career, probably half of my career, I would come across as very straightforward or very tough. Because maybe I was, trying to be kind of simulating a couple of those male leadership adjectives, right? And as I've gotten older, I think that, hey, female leaders we can lead with so much more, compassion, kindness, especially in the world that we live in today with so much complexity around the world. I do believe that there's such a need for more women leaders to step up, to bring their voices, to have a stronger voice. And that ultimately is what's going to help us have a more equal world, regardless of whether you're in produce or not, right? I mean, this is really has nothing to do with whether you're in agriculture, in banking, in finance, in technology, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that women feeling comfortable with finding their voice, finding their style, but you have to kind of do the work, right? I mean, that doesn't necessarily come intuitive, and you don't just wake up one day saying, "Oh, this is my style." I think that is why I strongly believe in either partnering yourself with someone like a career coach, an executive coach, a personal brand coach that really helps you kind of navigate those waters.
And you made a very important point about the new role of community. I mean, the whole world is really shifting to a more community mindset where brands, whether personal or actually commercial brands, clamoring for attention on the sidelines are a thing of the past. It's really about belonging to an ecosystem, being part of a community. And I feel that leadership has evolved from very rigid models that we had. And probably that's what you were imitating at the beginning of your career and reflecting on, because even women back then were really strong. But leadership has evolved into a more sensitive, human, authentic leadership that is going to allow us to build community, to connect. Because if people don't see themselves in you, they cannot share your vision and follow you and be invested in it. If they don't see the vulnerability, if they don't see that you are also human, they can connect with you at the level you need them to move them to action, absolutely invested in the vision you're sharing with them.
Yeah.
So that's really where the world is going, is
And I love
building
that this point of
community-centered world.
being vulnerable. Uh, and I don't know how many times in my career I was called, "Oh, you're too emotional." And I think that I hate it when anyone, whether it's in my career or my family or my friends, tell me that, because, yeah, we're human beings, we're emotional creatures. So first of all, let's accept that we have emotions, right? But what do you think, Carmel? I mean, I know you've been doing a lot of work in the last 6 7 months with a lot of the produce companies, and you were really kind of diving deep into this point. How do you see these emotions playing in the C-suite room?
I think that women have so much passion, and that passion is something that needs to not be tamped down, but to be focused in very strategic ways, to be very tactical about how we understand not only what we're trying to get across, the things that we have to contribute, but to understand the self that's contributing what we are coming with, right? So when I do the work that I do specifically, and Ruth, this goes hand in glove with what you've been talking about, that deeper understanding, deeper awareness of self is this key part that we can't separate out. Like Julie, you talk about, being called to emotional, and, the moment you step to cross the threshold to say, well, yes, I am emotional. I am this amazing Latin woman leader in the industry, and I am all me, and that's who I am. I'm going to be this person. That all of a sudden is currency. It's money in the bank, right there. People understand that, they see that, they respond to that. And so as I've been interacting with women in the produce industry at leadership level and up and coming leadership level, the big things that we're talking about are their discovery of themselves in these ways. Like, you can't project something you don't understand. So you really do need to understand yourself first and who you are. Ruth, you've spoken to that in so many different ways today. And then how to be very intentional, very precise and strategic in how you focus that. That emotion, sometimes we have those situations that want to reduce us to tears, and we need to be able to have our own private moment. And that happens on both sides. That's not just women, right? On the other side, though, to be able to channel all of that passion. I had one woman in one of the trainings I was leading. She had a huge presentation to the top leaders in the global organization, and she was so nervous about this. And as we walked through in the training and coaching and gave her some different assignments, she came back the next week and she said, I realized from what we were working on that I am going to walk into this, instead of trying to convince them, I'm actually walking in to bring them into my excitement and my passion for this solution that I've worked so hard to put together. And how amazing is it for me to have that opportunity to bring them into seeing what I see, how powerful that can be for the entire company. And that's a perfect example of, I think, that personal brand coming into its own, being able to perform in an organization in ways that benefit not only the person who's bringing that, but, you know, in this case, her, but also the entire organization and the leaders who are making decisions.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much power in what you said, and I feel that I lead that way. I have brought in so many people into the excitement and the power of a personal brand. When I talk to people that are on the fence, I just share the passion that moves me. And it is infectious, and they immediately get it and they come on board, and then they are the ones, you know, seeking more information and getting themselves better at it, because they discover these hidden secret weapon that they had that now is at their disposal. And you know, Julie, what you were saying about vulnerability, I always help my leaders understand as we work on personal brand and what to share and what not to share. And I prepare them for media or big events, speaking opportunities, or communicating effectively, etc. There is a fine line between being authentic, I mean, what's authentic, and private. And there is a fine line between being vulnerable and being childish or dramatic. So it is
Mhm.
very important to understand that you can be vulnerable and show vulnerability without being labeled dramatic or childish, because you know and you are empowered to use that moment to build your own leadership. It's not
I
just a
love.
moment for
Yeah.
you to release some tears and some tension. It's a moment to connect deeply and bring people in. So it's managing that power.
That power, yeah, and then managing the passion too, yeah. And I think that that's also what I learned through my career, and as both of you just said it, managing the passion and managing all of that energy through the right channels. It's been an art, right? I mean, I think that um, it's how do you manage all of that energy to give you the best ROI in your life and in your career. So, ladies, as we start to wrap it up here, as you know, because we obviously we have people to go back to their meetings and so on. Any final thoughts, Ruth? Obviously, we will be posting all of your emails and kind of your website and all of that for people to reach out through LinkedIn. But any final thoughts, both from you, Carmel and Ruth?
Well,
Go, yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
I start. Okay. Well, I have a few final thoughts. I mean, real influence is not about being viral. It's about being consistent. It's about providing value, being insightful and helpful to others. LinkedIn is not another thing you work on. Is where you work. Is a leadership platform. Actually, leaders, LinkedIn, and social media activity is impacting shareholder value. So, understanding that is important. However, that's not the only way to exercise your personal brand and your leadership. So, think about partnering with the right people for media relations, earned media, paid media, and for speaking engagements also as part of your strategy. Um, Most importantly, before you begin, clarify what you want to be known for. what's at the core of that narrative you want to build, what are the values you want to be anchored to, and then show up consistently, comment, share lessons, engage with purpose, really try to be resonant, not just reach people, right? It's not about reaching, it's about being resonant, it's about providing value. And, most importantly, you don't need 20 years of experience and a huge title to share what you know. What you know is valuable and your perspective is valuable. So start sharing it now with confidence, with intention, and in a strategic way.
I love it. Confidence and intention. That's I'm keeping that. Carmel, any final thoughts on your side?
Well, first of all, Ruth, thank you so much. Like, this has been incredible to have you on and to have you take us so deeply inside. And there were so many like treasures in this particular cast that it's one definitely to go back and watch. I'm going to go back and watch it too. I took a lot of great notes. So I just want to say that. I want to add to what we were talking about as we were finishing up, that I love the Eleanor Roosevelt quote where she says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And I think that as women and as leaders, all too often, we'll have that self-doubt inside at some level when we are pursuing where we really belong, where we really should be in an organization. And to remember that we are the ones that require and demand the respect that we want to have. We are the ones that hold the reins of that respect that we expect to receive from others, and to never give that up, to always know that we hold that. We should never allow somebody else to hold the reins of our respect, and the validation that we want to have. We give that to ourselves first and most and always. So that's the last thing I wanted to add, Julie.
Love
What
it. Well, thank you both. Thank you, Carmel. Thank you, Ruth, for joining us today. Thank you for our community. Obviously, we will be sharing the recording of this. We want to thank all of our partners and our sponsors. That those are the ones who make all of this possible. And Ruth, let's stay connected. We look forward to see you in some of the future events that Global Women Fresh will be hosting. And then have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
Ruth.
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Julie.
Thank you
Amazing.
both.